A know-it-all white guy narrator gets us caught up on the current state of brain transplantation as we leer at a naked young dead woman in some kind of massive incubator. Have scientists cheated death, or has our obsession with immortality caused us to create a monster? Cut to a crypt robbing. The unknown malefactors sneak the corpse back to a mansion in the woods. Here, a mad scientist in a basement lab tries to reanimate the body in the same incubator. He fares better than he did at first, but without fresh live bodies, his experiment is doomed to fail. Dr. Frank works for an elderly woman who's just wealthy enough to make trouble for herself. Craving eternal life and mourning her aging carcass as it rots out from under her, Mrs. March has enlisted Dr. Frank to harness atomic energy and create brain transplant technology that will enable her to transfer her wizened mind into a sexy young female body. Together with Frank, she's concocted a plan B in case the grave robbing doesn't work out. In the interest of fresh, live, young bodies, she's put out an ad for a housekeeper and has gotten 3 nibbles, all of them teenage lasses from abroad. Mrs. March sends her gloomy gopher Victor to pick up the dupes at the LA airport. Shades of Terror Red Wolf Inn here. The 3 are Viennese Nina Rhodes, our heroine, a Mexican mumbler by the name of Anita Gonzalez, and British Beatrice, who sports possibly the worst affected English accent in cinema history.
Say, pardon me, but how far is Hollywood from here? Which way? Oh, really? Mm-hmm. This sounds like a sister act. I'm from England. No.
The girls briefly trade hopes and dreams. By and large, they've come to Hollywood anticipating stardom and see their gig at the Marsh Estate as a stepping stone along the way. Victor piles them into the station wagon and skips them back to March's remote mansion, where they rapidly learn things are not as they seem. Although Mrs. March has hired them as housekeepers, she chastises them whenever they try to clean anything, telling them they're putting unneeded wear and tear on their pristine bodies. She examines them in demeaning and invasive ways, as though after a prized racehorse rather than domestic help. Doors keep getting locked behind them, which only foments their paranoia. Worst of all, an elusive monster lurking on the estate grounds first stalks them, then claims poor Anita's life as the surviving girls look on, recoiling in horror. A grainy made-for-TV flick from when the art was young, Atomic Brain comes across less like an ABC movie of the week and more like a Z-grade 42nd Street exploitation sleaze fest. There's a variety of reasons for this. For one, the movie seems to be shooting for the patient, eerie-building narrative of a gothic mystery. But because the story is simple and the character is not particularly well fleshed out, the movie can never establish the slow momentum it's plainly after. Instead, it just seems sluggish. One unanticipated advantage of this, actually, is that it feels full-length, despite its stingy 64-minute running time. The other reason is Mrs. March's overtly sublimated chicken hawk lesbianism, and the perversity of the film more generally. When she pokes and prods the sexy lasses, these queasy scenes do unsavory work on numerous levels. First, they, like the camera that lingers on the sexy corpse in the movie's opening, are plainly meant to titillate even though their context is decidedly unerotic. Then there's the fact that the elderly Mrs. March is examining these women's bodies to judge their suitability as chassis for the engine of her mind. And, not least, composer Gene Cower, who went on to score the notorious Faces of Death series, chooses for some reason to pepper Atomic Brain with inappropriately bouncy cartoon-style music. Perhaps he'd hoped his over-reliance on xylophone would put one in mind of Bones, but it just makes the movie seem indifferent to the fate of the 3 imprisoned women and gives it an out-of-pace jauntiness that's downright surreal. The film's ultimate outrage, revealed in the first few minutes. Once in the pulchritudinous body of her choice, the corrupt matron plans to have sex with Victor, and perhaps the doctor as well, as a reward for his efforts to put her there.
Victor wondered which one Mrs. March would pick, the little Mexican, the girl from Vienna, or the buxom blonde. Victor knew his pick, but he still felt uneasy. Making love to an 80-year-old woman in the body of a 20-year-old girl is insanity.
This Harold and Maude gone wrong conceit would better serve the foulest pornography than a made-for-TV film. It's a notion that shocks the conscience. But in a confessional mood, I can also understand both their rationales. Mrs. March's to be beautiful and live forever. Victor's to feel the warmth of a physical love that's plainly distant to the aged man.
You're not looking for me, are you? Why would a pretty young girl want to be around an old man?
Watching The Atomic Brain is mostly an ordeal, although it can grow on you. Its dreary, sleepy pacing tried my patience, but it also created a unique mood of pervasive, slow, looming death the sense the movie has of inhabiting Mrs. March's wobbling gait, her halting breath, and unsteady words. There's an assonance in this that will grab you if you're in the right frame of mind. It gives the movie a deeper resonance that it might not otherwise have. Deep down, The Atomic Brain is a bit eerie, mostly despite itself. Atomic Brain comes as a late entry in a genre, the brain-in-a-pan sci-fi shocker, that betrays a certain mid-century mentality about what it means to be a human subject. I mentioned chassis and engines before, and The Brain That Wouldn't Die, The Head, and countless other movies of the 50s and early 60s seem to work from something like this metaphor. The skull encases the gray matter of the soul. The body amounts to a mobile enabling casement, a way for the driver or motor to work its will. This might have seemed like a transparent way of envisioning human essence at the time. Since then, movie metaphors for the soul have proliferated and dispersed. The replicable humanoid selves of the Terminator and AI, the Matrix's supple electric messiah. These later movies confuse mind and body, reality and illusion, human and synthetic. The Atomic Brain reminds us of a simpler time when the life was in the mind, the mechanics in the body, the surfacing and operation of the human creature strictly modular. It's interesting to consider this movie's static view of the way man operates in relation to its fetishistic energy. The stasis enables the fetish, whereas later the human form and human essence intermingle, become difficult to fix, too changeable to ever hold in one's hand.
She ate it.